The garden hadn't heard laughter in years. Once upon a time, it echoed with the bright, wild giggles of a little girl chasing butterflies. Now it stood still, manicured, yes, but lifeless. Trees trimmed like sculptures, flowers obediently blooming. Under gardener orders, but Joy had abandoned this place long ago. Nathaniel Ashcroft, a billionaire known in the business world as the Steel Mind, sat by the window in his sprawling estate. A fortress of glass and polished stone, perched on the cliffs of Carmel. His eyes were empty. Somewhere between the blue of ocean waves and the cold of his own fortune, he'd lost the color of being human. His only daughter, Alara, had once been the sun in his solar system. Bright, fierce, artistic, wild. She was 10 when a car accident stole the use of her legs, and just before her 12th birthday, it also stole her mother. Nathaniel had watched both injuries happen in slow motion. The first through glass and metal. The second through silence, when his wife stopped talking, stopped eating, stopped living, until one day, she simply didn't wake up. After that, Nathaniel buried himself in numbers and power. Billion-dollar mergers replaced bedtime stories. Boardrooms replaced bedtime hugs. Alara, now 16, sat by the large fountain every afternoon, her wheelchair facing the sun like it was a faraway god. She didn't ask for much. Her nurses came and went. Tutors tried to reach her. But most days, she'd draw quietly or listen to music through giant headphones, drowning in melodies only she understood, until Malik arrived. He wasn't the kind of driver Ashcroft's estate usually hired. Young. Black. Wore high-top sneakers with his uniform. He sang while washing the car. Hummed gospel under his breath while opening doors. When the hiring agency sent him, the estate manager raised an eyebrow, but Malik had a clean record and sparkling references. Nathaniel didn't care. He rarely even saw the staff anymore, but Alara noticed. She first spotted him dancing a little while polishing the Bentley's front mirror. Just a sway of the shoulders. Then a tiny spin with the rag in hand. Her lips almost curled. The next day, he greeted her like she was a person, not porcelain. "Hey, Miss Alara," he said with a smile that didn't ask anything of her. "How's the world treating you today?" She blinked. No one had asked her that in months. A week later, he played Earth, Wind and Fire while driving her to physical therapy. And when she didn't scold him, he turned it up just a little. Alara stared out the window, lips moving to lyrics she hadn't heard since her mother's final birthday. Something thawed. Nathaniel didn't notice until his office calendar pinged him with a reminder: Alara's therapy review 3:30 p.m. Out of a mix of guilt and obligation, he stepped away from a pending acquisition to attend. But what he saw in the side garden stopped him cold. There she was, his daughter. Not in tears. Not silent. Not frozen, laughing, and across from her, holding her hands gently while she sat in her wheelchair, was Malik. Not mocking. Not pitying. Dancing. They moved in slow, swaying circles, her upper body leaning gently with the rhythm, his steps tender and controlled. No music played, only the wind, the rustling trees, and the hush of something holy. Nathaniel's heart clenched. For a second, the CEO in him wanted to explode. What is this? Who gave permission? Why is my daughter smiling? It confused him. Frightened him. And something deeper, something raw, made him envious. He stepped forward, ready to break it up. But he paused when Malik leaned down and whispered something into Alara's ear, and she laughed again. A sound Nathaniel hadn't heard in 4 years and 17 days. Something inside him cracked. The billionaire, the man who could bend markets with a phone call, stood still and helpless in his own house, watching a minimum wage driver give his daughter something he no longer could. Joy. He didn't fire Malik that day. In fact, he didn't say a word. Just stood behind the curtain, silently shattered, as the sun dipped lower in the garden sky. That evening, as the estate lights blinked on, Nathaniel found himself standing outside Alara's room. His hand hovered near the door. He didn't knock, but inside, for the first time in years, he listened to her hum, and he cried, quietly, like a man who just discovered he wasn't made of stone after all. The next morning, Nathaniel Ashcroft stood in the marble-floored garage like a general before battle. Malik had just finished parking the Rolls when he noticed the billionaire waiting by the columns. It wasn't common. Nathaniel was a man of glass walls and distant echoes, not direct conversations. "Mr. Ashcroft," Malik said calmly, wiping his hands with a cloth, "what were you doing yesterday in the garden?" Nathaniel's tone was clipped, precise. Eyes cold, Malik didn't flinch. Spending time with Alara. She wanted to dance. She can't dance, Nathaniel said too quickly. She can, Malik replied. Just differently. Silence, Malik held the moment steady. Sir, I wasn't trying to cross a line. She smiled. That's all I wanted. Nothing more. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. The words felt like a challenge, but somehow, also a gift. She hasn't smiled in 4 years, the billionaire whispered, barely audible. Malik nodded. She's still got rhythm in her. You just have to hear it. Nathaniel didn't say a word. Just turned and walked away, but something had shifted. In his silence, Malik had earned more than a warning. He'd earned respect. The next afternoon, Malik returned to the garden, but this time, he didn't sneak. He rolled Alara's wheelchair beneath the cherry blossom tree again, and without hesitation, took out his phone and played Ella Fitzgerald. The air shimmered with soft jazz. You came back, she said, her voice lighter. I told you your groove's still alive. Malik smiled. This time, he extended a hand again. Alara hesitated, then slowly reached forward. Together, they moved, not standing, but swaying. Malik guided her hands, her shoulders. He moved with her as if the wheelchair didn't exist. Her eyes lit up. For a moment, she wasn't bound by chrome and leather wheels. She was just Alara again, from an upstairs window. Nathaniel watched. Not out of anger this time, but disbelief. Tears filled his eyes. He hadn't seen her this alive in years, not since the accident. The billionaire had poured millions into therapy, surgeries, and specialists. But this joy, came from a man making $30 an hour. A man who saw her not as broken, but as brilliant, and deep down, something in Nathaniel cracked. He wasn't sure if it was pain or hope. That evening, the long dining table was quieter than usual. The silverware gleamed. The fireplace crackled softly. Alara, cheeks still rosy from her garden session, picked at her salmon with a smile. Malik's music still echoed in her memory. Nathaniel sat across from her, his fork frozen midair. You were with Malik again? He said finally, voice unreadable. Alara looked up. Yes. He's the driver. Not a friend. She placed her fork down gently. He's more than that. Nathaniel's tone sharpened. He's not your therapist. He's not family. Alara looked him square in the eyes. No, he's not. But he listens. He sees me, not the chair. The air chilled. I hired the best doctors in the world, Alara. I know, she whispered. But sometimes, healing doesn't come from medicine. Sometimes it comes from music, from being seen. And Malik. He sees the part of me you stopped looking for. The words hit him harder than he expected. The billionaire who had conquered boardrooms sat across from his daughter, suddenly small. She wasn't accusing. She was pleading, but he didn't yet know how to answer. 2 days later, the Ashcroft estate hosted a charity gala. Crystal chandeliers, tuxedos, and polite applause filled the ballroom. But Alara sat to the side, isolated in a wheelchair, invisible among the glittering elites. Nathaniel was across the room shaking hands when the music shifted, something soulful, something real. Heads turned. Malik, dressed neatly in black, approached Alara. May I have this dance? She laughed softly. Right here. In front of them. Especially here, he smiled. He placed one hand gently behind her shoulders, the other guiding her wrist, and began to move, not with force, but flow. The wheelchair spun gracefully. Alara raised her arms and let her body feel the rhythm. Gasps echoed. Some guests stared. A few scoffed, but then, something remarkable, others began clapping. Some swayed. Even waitstaff paused to smile. Malik dipped her gently, then spun her back up. In that moment, she wasn't broken. She wasn't tragic, she was dancing, and Nathaniel, frozen by the champagne bar, felt something inside him quake. His daughter wasn't just surviving, she was soaring, and the man who helped her get there wasn't a threat. He was a miracle. Later that night, long after the last gala guest had gone, Nathaniel found Malik in the garden. Malik stood near the fountain, lost in thought, until the billionaire's deep voice broke the silence. You were a dancer once, Nathaniel said, not a question, but a quiet realization. Malik turned slowly. Used to be. Before my brother's accident. He was paralyzed, too. I never danced again until Alara. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. You understand? I understand more than you think, Malik replied. Pain doesn't just live in the body. It settles in the soul. Nathaniel stepped forward, softer now. I thought money could fix everything. I forgot what joy looked like in her eyes until she danced with you. Malik remained still. I never meant to overstep. You didn't, Nathaniel said, voice low. You gave her something I couldn't. They stood in silence, two men from vastly different worlds, bound by one girl's laughter echoing in the wind. It was the first time the billionaire didn't see Malik as the driver. He saw him as the man who reminded his daughter how to live. The next morning, Malik entered the Ashcroft foyer expecting another routine drive, but instead found Nathaniel waiting beside the grand piano. I have a proposition, the billionaire said. Malik tensed. If this is about me overstepping, Nathaniel raised a hand. It's about purpose. Alara is building her world again. And you're part of that foundation. Malik frowned. I don't need charity, sir. This isn't charity, Nathaniel said, his voice firm. It's legacy. He slid a file across the table. Inside, documents for a non-profit dance therapy center. Malik's name was on the header. I want to fund this. I want you to lead it. Malik was stunned. Why me? Because you reminded me that healing doesn't always come in a lab coat or a checkbook. Sometimes it walks in wearing driving gloves and playing Ella Fitzgerald. For the first time, Malik was speechless. You gave my daughter something priceless. Let's give it to the world. Malik looked toward the staircase where Alara was listening, smiling through quiet tears. In that moment, everything changed. He wasn't just the driver anymore. He was part of something bigger. 6 months later, in a sunlit community center far from the marble halls of Ashcroft Estate, music filled a modest but vibrant studio. Children in wheelchairs spun with joy, veterans with prosthetics tapped their toes, and therapists guided every motion with hope. At the center stood Malik, no longer in uniform, but in purpose. Beside him, Alara laughed as she guided a young girl's hands, showing her how to feel rhythm, not just hear it. On opening day, Nathaniel stood quietly in the back, unnoticed, a rare smile softening his face. He watched his daughter shine, not in pity, but in purpose. Then she looked over, caught his eye, and waved him forward. For the first time in years, Nathaniel stepped onto the floor. Hesitant. Vulnerable, Malik extended a hand. Let's show them how billionaires dance. He grinned, the crowd laughed, and Nathaniel chuckled, awkwardly trying a step. Alara joined in, spinning between them both. No cameras. No applause. Just music and movement. In that simple dance, wounds healed. Walls crumbled, and the man who once believed he had everything realized he almost missed what mattered most: family, joy, connection, and one black driver who brought it all back.